Sir.
Hello. How are you?
Pretty good. Yeah, feeling good. Going camping this weekend. So nice enjoying Friday, and then we'll head out and
Are you going to bring your agents camping with you?
no, um, don't think so. Probably need to rest my mind a little bit from constantly keeping the agents busy. Do you feel any of this anxiety about like when I don't have them working? It's like they're blocked. I need to like kind of give them more input. I feel like I need to like take breaks from that as well.
I don't feel the same anxiety that people report about agents being blocked. I do find that like once or twice a week I end up working really late. I sit
Mm,
down, I have this like one idea and then there's a second idea and then all of a sudden you're like in the flow and you kind of
mm-hmm.
just go for 2.5 or 3 hours and then that I pay the price for that for sure.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to pull away sometimes when I'm like really, really in it. But I also find that it's like more. I feels more important for me to take vacations in an
Mm,
AI world and actually like separate from it. I feel like I
mm-hmm.
notice a like spur of productivity when I get back that like I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure was there before, but it is more noticeable to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a late night last night. I kind of find maybe about every week or two I do some late night. Like usually my sleep's pretty good. I think my wife is extending my life by like a decade just by kind of keeping me like, pretty regulated. But then like maybe once a week, I'm like just in the middle of like, coding kind of she goes to bed and I'm like, yeah, I'll be to bed soon. And then like 3 hours go by. I think I went to bed maybe like 1:32 last night and got up, took my daughter to summer camp. So a little running on fumes, but if I do it one night a week instead of like multiple, it's usually fine.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, it's been a while. We haven't caught up.
Yeah, what's new?
I mean, well, you got me back into Conductor.
Yes, let's talk about Conductor.
Well, so I used Conductor ages ago when they were still Melty. So Melty.sh
Mm,
was kind of their thing, and they had an app. First, they had an app where you could put a prompt and see it in like all of the different models, like what they would answer, and you
mm,
could kind of you kind of manage it that way. And then they
mm-hmm,
switched to Conductor, and I remember trying it out, and they hadn't figured out work trees yet, they hadn't figured out
mm,
environmental variables yet, and it was
mm-hmm.
like clunky. Um, and so I went away from it. I was, like a heathen. I had all my different terminal windows up. And now I went back to it and it's so good. I mean,
It's so good, yeah.
it's so good that like I have a couple of nitpick. I do have some nits, but in general, I feel so much more organized, and I feel so much less anxiety about what's
Mm,
not happening because I'm like, oh no, that one's just sitting here. Like I'm
mm-hmm.
okay with the fact that that one is sitting there, but these are
Yeah,
the ones that like I'm like I really need to get done, and I'll come back and clean it up.
totally. Yeah, we should see if we get Charlie on the show sometime. But
We
I've
should
been
see
a
if we
big
should get
Conductor
Charlie on the
fan.
show. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like one thing I like about it, I find myself kind of gravitating toward tools that are like provider agnostic because I also
Yeah.
use the Codex app. So I have Conductor and Codex. I'm using Conductor at work every day, and then I have like some personal side projects in Codex because I mean that app's also quite polished and nice. But there's something I like about just that I can switch between OpenAI and Anthropic models. So anytime there's a new model, it's like without changing any of my workflows, I just like go change the default for a few days to like get a feel for it. And then yeah, I don't really want to know how work trees work. That's like kind of I'm not smart enough to understand it, so I just want to be able to like do Command N or just new and like stuff happens. And
Yeah, no, it's great, and I'm so excited. We need to say thank you to Anthropic for continuing to support the Conductor for like reversing their because, you know,
yeah,
that for the longest time that's what kept me off of it. Is because like I was a Claude Code was like Opus whatever was my go-to. That has changed a little bit in the past month or so, but yeah, it should be like email clients. Like I'm happy to pay
mm,
your subscription. I'm happy, but like let
mm-hmm,
me use my email client of choice. Do not block me.
mm-hmm,
Boris, if you're listening, speak up for us.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I like it. Yeah, the other thing that I started using only in the last week is Devin. I don't know if you've ever tried Devin. I'm kind of late to the party. I mean, I remember I saw Scott Wu give a talk at, I think it was the AI Eng World's Fair in San Francisco. Maybe this might have been like 2 years ago or something. Like when it was Cognition, and that was the that was sort of the AI Eng World's Fair. I was a little bit jaded by it because I heard the word agent so many times and nobody could show me one. I kept asking, like, do you have an agent? Can I see one? And they, like, everyone wanted to sell these kind of agent orchestration frameworks and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, I don't even, it doesn't even feel like we've built the server yet. And you're trying to sell microservices. But then when I saw that talk from Scott Wu, I was like, oh, if that thing is real, that's the first thing I've seen where I'm like, I would call that an agent. And he was a little bit humble at the time about saying, we use it internally. It's kind of like a junior SWE. We give it sort of the easy bugs, not the hard ones. So I kind of like didn't really pay attention because when people started using it, it was like $500 a month. Sounds like it didn't work super well. But I had this problem where I wanted to be able to kick certain things off from Slack for my CEO. Like if she wants to change copy on the marketing page, it's a little ridiculous that she has to like Slack that to me, and then I paste it in Conductor, and that makes it PR, and then I like merge it. So, and so we just got Devon stuff. It's like pretty sweet actually. So we're now, I'm kind of using that for this sort of like Slack-based workflows. And this morning it was the first time where like a Sentry error came in. And I just saw like little eyes, like the little, Devin basically just puts the little like side eyes, like, yep, I'm taking a look. And then, a couple of minutes later, he's like, yep, here it kind of did the diagnosis and can decide to resolve it or, go to a PR. But yeah,
I haven't touched yet, but I bet this is why Anthropic leaned in so heavily on Claude Tag, because they don't want Devin in this space. They're trying to like box it out. Interesting. Yeah, how much is it?
Yeah, I mean well, it was, what was it, like 40? I think I just started the $20 a month plan. I
there's
haven't
a
really been hitting limits. Yeah, so they redid all their pricing, and so but then it's a nice model actually because I could basically set something up for myself, and I could add it in, and like another thing is like the release notes. So we have like a skill where basically we get Claude to go and like compare our production branch for our main branch, like go read all of those PRs, go actually explore the code. It takes like 5 minutes or something. It takes a while. And it writes these detailed release notes, converts it to PDF. And so we were doing that kind of, manually, locally. And so that's another one where now I can just in Slack say, yo, Devin, give me the release notes. And so I set that up for myself and I was like, okay, this is working. But then my CEO, if she like tries to talk to Devin, it'll say, sorry, you don't have a seat. So now we added 3 seats basically. So it's like an $80 a month team plan and like 40 per seat, I think, is the current pricing. I think I'm losing you on the internet. Maybe be back.
We were laughing about you getting kicked out. Yeah, I know, the new house, man. I got to move closer to the router. I got to get a booster.
This is the first podcast from the new house. Congrats, by the way.
It is the first podcast. Yeah, thank you. It is nice being able to work like basically outside.
Yeah, I mean, while you're walking, I mean, what's interesting, I mean, Conductor versus Devin, I think everybody's kind of gravitating toward like agent orchestration. I haven't used the latest Cursor in a while, but like Cursor also, everyone's just sort of like, yeah, you want to be able to delegate tasks to agents. They should run remotely. You need a place to kind of manage them. But it's interesting, like Conductor takes this kind of like local first approach. And now I guess they have a pro plan now, which is they're going to have cloud agents. I haven't used that, but I just, it's like local work trees. But then, Devin for me is like remote first, and it's in like a browser. I haven't tried their desktop app, but like there's kind of different trade-offs for both. So being able to just trigger something in Slack and like not even see the UI is like pretty nice. But then for my day job where I'm like really trying to like get work done, I still kind of prefer Conductor and being able to open an ID and tweak things and kind of just feel a little bit closer to the code, I guess, with the local workflow.
Yeah, I understand. It definitely feels faster. There's a series of things where I'm kind of okay to let it go, and I just want to see the Vercel link. And then there's other stuff where you want to be able to like run it, and I mean anything that touches the database, right? Like it's nice to feel like you're not going to mess anything up.
Yeah. Have you played with? There's this Eve framework. Did you see that for Vercel?
You sent it to me. I have been kicking it around. Yeah. I discovered it through you, and I've been on one of the projects that I'm working on that has a chatbot. I'm actually running in the background right now like a couple of basically trying to decide if it's worth it to adopt it right now. Is it something that you're using?
Yeah, so we're doing like a little hack week at our company this week, which is fun. Where we just got a sort of a bunch of work done on the core product, and we're kind of in a go-to-market phase for that. So, like, hey, let's kind of pause and do a hack week where we think about like automating our company and like kind of just like one of the interesting tasks of building like a company today is like how do we use AI to kind of make ourselves better and get more leverage. And so all three of us have just been sort of tinkering on different ways. And so I built something in Eve, and then my coworker made something in Eve. So it's kind of interesting to just see. I mean, one reflection that's kind of interesting is just the shape that we're kind of converging on for agents, because Cloudflare also has like the Flu framework, or I think there's like Think Project Think is another one. So there's a few of these agent frameworks, but like if you kind of look at like what's similar or different, everything's got like an instructions file, and then there's skills is great because those are portable, so you can kind of take them anywhere. And then you need a way to define tools, and then you need a place to run them, and then the one thing I like that Eve did is it kind of adds this idea of channels, so you can kind of decouple the idea of like the smarts are in the agent, the behavior, but then you might have different channels, and they make it very easy to sort of have a Slack channel that like it's very Devin-like, and it has the like Slack must be opening up. I don't quite know what's happening with like Slack is. It was always sort of very locked down. You could do like block hit and like very sort of limited things, but now Devin, and also the thing I built in Eve, you get this like shimmering thing with the name. So we have one called Sleuth now that you can like, it'll go and investigate sort of what happened in like a session. And so, it shimmers and it gives you little status updates. So I think Slack must be doing something to kind of modernize their platform for AI. And so the Eve framework kind of uses that, which is pretty nice.
Well, I can't believe Slack hasn't integrated this. I mean, I can't believe that Slack hasn't put together Conductor for your work. I mean, maybe it's just not aligned with their strategy, but it's like it's sitting right there.
Yeah.
And a earlier version of Slack, I feel like would have already shipped it. But that's not where we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I am interested in Eve because the agent that I'm working on, I've seen it get anxiety about the number of turns that it can use before it like loses its like before I cap it. And at least the way that I understand Eve, it would be much easier for me to just like let it run for the time that it takes. And but there's always a trade-off there. Like is it worth it to do it now versus later versus some other time? But
yeah, one thing that is coming up for me a lot as I build agents is like the permission stuff seems like the hairiest part of the whole problem. And I mean, we're only a 3-person company, but it's already kind of like the engine. When I wear my engineer hat, I'm like, amazing, I can like build so much. And it's like agents, they're gonna like do all this stuff for me. But then I like put my IT hat on, and I'm like, ooh, like, do I want to like give these MCPs to where are these keys, and like what could go wrong? And so I'll just give you like a concrete example. Like one of the things I was trying to build this week is basically like something that summarizes the user activity from yesterday. And so just we're trying to like learn, like, is our product, and we have people using our product, like, is it working? Like, did anything go wrong? Things we should fix. And so we have PostHog as sort of a data warehouse that like has events and things that would sort of tell us if I basically sat down and like looked through all of that raw data, I would probably learn things, but I don't have time to do that. And so basically wanted to create a workflow where for each session have AI kind of make a summary. And PostHog has this feature built in, it's kind of stock, but we might care about sort of certain things like summarize each session in this way, and then sort of do a roll up for all of yesterday, and then post that to Slack. Every morning I'd kind of like to come in and just get like little reports on like what's new. Like maybe I also want that from Sentry. Like, are there any new bugs, or like what should we be looking at? And so I first built this in kind of the naive way where I said, okay, this is kind of like a PostHog analyst that I can chat with in Slack and can like run queries, but like it's like too powerful, it's too broad. I don't want just like it can query anything. And like even though I lock the MCPs down, it's like still too much. And so now I'm trying to actually build almost like these little micro agents that just do like one thing. And so instead of thinking of it as like a persona, like an analyst, think of it more like what is the artifact I'm trying to produce. And so in this case, I think I called it like daily activity brief, basically. It's like the thing I want. And so now I'm sort of like, what's the least privilege I could actually give this? It's not even like PostHog. It's like this one query runs, and not even in the AI. Like that should just run as the first step of the process, and then inject that into a prompt, so I know exactly like kind of what's happening. Anyway, there's like so many different ways you could design these things, right? Like where do you draw the boundaries, and
Is
where
this what
does who
people
has
mean when they
permission?
say loops? Is it
I don't know. Yeah. I think people mean lots of things when they say loops. Every word in AI, like doesn't it, like loses all meaning pretty
we
quickly.
need Simon to define loops for
I
us so
know.
that we know what we're talking about here. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that some people, I think Clairvaux on her like how I AI thing, I think she just did one about loops. But I mean, her definition is closer to what I mean by like I think it's just a workflow basically. But it's
Yeah.
like there's a trigger, and then there's some process that AI is doing something, and then it probably is like posting somewhere or writing something. So I would just call it a workflow. But I think some people mean that to mean loops, that just like okay, every time a Sentry thing comes in, like what gets triggered. But then but like the name loop to me that sounds more like the Ralph Wiggum like things are like working overnight kind of thing. So I don't know. It means lots of
Yeah,
things probably.
that's what I have not been able to parse, and but I feel like I'm supposed to care, or if I'm not doing loops, maybe I'm doing it wrong. But I do have a couple of like what I would actually consider loops. I have a for my day job. We have a very noisy Slack channel that is where people dump their product feedback. And for a while there, I was trying to keep up with it, and then at a certain point in time, I set up a loop where I think every morning I have Claude go and read all of the posts and tell me which ones it thinks are like actual bugs I should care about, and which ones are like just need to be categorized into like product feedback. And then like and then once a week I have it go through and turn it into like almost like a top user issues report, and like Delta versus last week, and like what issues are rising and falling. And it is automated, right? And that there are things that actually come out of it, but it is. But I'm not sure. I haven't been able to figure out how to do that in a way that is like product building, if you will. Only like kind of around the edges. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. Another sort of interesting observation from me this week is my our CEO. She uses the Claude desktop app a lot.
Yeah.
And what's cool is that she has been able to basically like program her computer in new ways without sort of thinking about it as programming. And so she's done a couple of these things, which I guess you might call a loop, where like when we sort of graduated beyond like the Google Sheet, we like, okay, we're gonna need a CRM. There's like too many customers to keep track of. Okay, we need a CRM. One thing that was interesting is we kind of looked around. I mean, there's like Salesforce and HubSpot, but you're like, is that really the future? Like, we're pretty small. Like, let's pick something else. And we looked at it three or four, but like the developer experience for agents ended up being like the critical thing to pick. Is we picked Atio, which is a nice product. It's nicely designed as a GUI, but it was actually picked because it just had the best developer experience, and it has like great MCPs for everything and CLIs. It's like basically got like a nice headless mode. And so our CEO like interacts with our CRM primarily through Claude via MCP. And then Claude has a scheduled tasks feature. And so just by chatting with Claude, like, she's like, well, I want to see this kind of pipeline thing at like lunch every day, partly to kind of like help the engineers kind of see what's going on with go-to-market, but also just for her. And so like Claude basically writes some basically like script or spec for itself. And it has access to the CRM via MCP and Slack. And she can even make ones that are like read this Slack channel and everything that happened yesterday, and then summarize it and like post back like a little summary. So she's basically creating these little loops that only run when her laptop is open, and so if she closes it, it won't run. But I'm like, that's an interesting pattern that like you can kind of prototype for yourself via MCP in your existing tool. But then there's this gap of like, okay, now if this becomes like a real thing, we want it to run when her laptop's closed. Like, where does that run? And there's like kind of this graduation path that we like haven't totally figured out. Like.
Yeah, you need Vercel for your loops, right? Like so that you can just be like, okay, put it in, put my environmental variables in, and like
Yeah.
yeah. Huh.
It's funny also that, I think as engineers we have like certain experience that, like building something just on my machine, just for me. It's like so fast, and I could fly. It's just like, oh, it's just on localhost. It's like, and it's like maybe it's in Git, maybe I'm just doing this. Like you could just move so quickly, and then you're like, okay, now this is useful if I want to like run it somewhere in a server. You're like, ooh, okay, like that's like and so my wife is basically kind of having this kind of an experience now, or like she's just like makes things in Claude. It's like kind of like it works on localhost, works on her machine, but then it's like you want to now lift that to like a server so it like works across devices or in Slack. Okay, there's like a pretty big gap there, and like where's the trust boundary? Where are the secrets stored? All this kind of stuff.
And just whatever you find when you move from your local machine to deploying, like it's always there's always a certain amount of pain, and it's so frustrating the first couple of times because you're like, but it works. I've seen it. It works, and you're like, well, it works here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, how do you miss Fable?
You know, I'm sort of bummed by the whole process, I
Yeah.
guess, and apparently like GPT 5.6 is kind of being held up. I mean, it seems like that's just the new paradigm, I guess, that we have this sort of like almost like implicit licensing regime without any of the rules written down, and so internally the companies are going to have the best model. Maybe they'll give it to the people that are sort of trusted. So it kind of bums me out. I personally I used Fable for 3 or 4 days. I didn't love it. I thought it was clearly very thorough. I didn't like its writing style. I kind of I mean it felt incrementally better, but I also like didn't have maybe long enough tasks where I would like really see it shine. Like if I had something to like run it overnight with dynamic workflows to like port something from X to Y, like it seems like I maybe needed like harder eval tasks. But to me, compared to like GPT 5.5 on like high or extra high reasoning, it was like it's kind of similar ballpark. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a step up over 4.8. Like 4.8,
Yeah.
I feel like I actually think Anthropic has kind of fumbled the ball here a little bit in that for do you remember when Opus 4.5 came out? All of a sudden, it was like
Mm-hmm.
you need to switch, right? You need to
Mm-hmm.
try it out, and I feel like we are starting to have a moment where at least the people that I really pay attention to, were
Mm-hmm.
definitely like 5.5 is better than 4.8,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I was trying it out, and I have to say that I agreed with that, and I think Fable was better than 5.5, but not
Mm-hmm.
way better. And
Mm-hmm.
there's something I still prefer Anthropic for design tasks,
Yeah.
but for just regular building, I'm like, OpenAI is back in the game.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's one
yeah,
reason back to the conductor thing. I like that I can sort of switch between them. I mean, they're both clearly continuing to like push the boundaries, and I mean, and it's just great that there's two, maybe three or four like players that, as a developer, it's like just awesome. People just keep like putting out more stuff for me, and it's like there's like there, and it's like flat subscription plans that I'm sure they're all like losing money on me.
don't shh. We can't let them. We
Oh,
can't let them
yeah.
raise the price. Oh. All right. Well, I have a big picture question for you that gets out of
Okay.
the day in and day out. But I've been thinking a little bit about this, and it gets a little bit to. It actually started with as I was thinking about else should we have on the show,
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking, the qualities that you feel like to succeed. We're now like 4 years into this AI world. Um, what do you think the qualities are that you most think you need to develop in order to be successful in it?
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely blurring a lot of the boundaries and roles. I mean, I feel like everyone feels this increase in agency, I guess, that like before if I had to depend on some other team to do something, some other role, I can just kind of do it myself. And I'm actually, it's like, but I also don't really know what I don't know. So like everyone's kind of increasing agency. But I mean, I mean, you and I guess, started our careers in product. I mean, it's some of those skills around like communication and empathy, whether it's like, trying empathy for users, trying to figure out what they want, or even a little bit like empathy for the agents. Like, how can I communicate? Like, I kind of know, like, okay, 5.5, I kind of know what you're like. How can I like communicate this in a way that like you're gonna go off and do a good job and like not get confused?
Yeah.
I also think like testing is maybe something that we don't talk enough about. So
Yeah.
I would not. I would be pretty uncomfortable giving young people advice right now because I don't even know like what advice I would give myself. I mean, we're obviously in like a very hard to predict time, but I feel like when people are like, "Oh, like you shouldn't do computer science anymore," it's like, well, maybe, but I feel like how do we test that a program is doing what we want it to do is something that like computer programmers, computer scientists think a lot about. And that skill is still like very much relevant and kind of the bottleneck. It's just like maybe I'm now testing like our release notes thing. Every time we run it, it's a little bit different, but like how do we get it to like do the thing that we want? So I don't know. What do you think? What's come to mind for you?
Yeah. Well, I think agent people say this publicly as agency, but I would almost say like courage is one
Mm,
that I just think it really rewards being willing to try.
mm-hmm,
Um, I think understanding how to run experiments is more important. There was
mm-hmm,
a Tyler Cohen piece where he was like, look, many experiments are actually very difficult for agents to run. And so that's a place
mm-hmm.
where you can complement them. I think your point about testing was a good one because I think manual testing is in some ways more important now than like code review.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are the ones that kind of like jump off of the
Mm-hmm.
top of my mind here. Personal charisma is
Yeah.
probably more important than it used to be. I don't know how you measure that, but
Yeah, I mean, another thing I've been thinking about is just like what's going to happen to the optimal team size. Like, I guess maybe if we just talk about kind of like EPD teams, like engineering teams. I don't know. I don't know. It probably depends in other areas, but like, we had the like two pizza team from Amazon, and we've kind of learned how to like, and even for me as like a startup founder, it's like okay, we're going to raise money to like hire a team. Like, how many people do we need? And you
yeah.
see like, in a way, I think smaller teams have almost the biggest gains from using these tools. We talked about this with Casey, I guess, on an earlier episode, and like,
Mhm.
and I think it's more so today than it was 6 months ago. So if like things keep going, if I project ahead, like, hey, how big should the team be if we like when we're at like
Mhm.
Series A scale, and like, okay, it's like smaller probably today than it was a year ago, but. Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's probably going to happen is just more like micro entrepreneurs and kind of maybe like
Mm,
mom and pop SaaS. Like the most common
mm,
business in history was like probably two people like had like a store in the front and like slept in the back. Are we gonna get like little, two people can basically run businesses for niches that were kind of underserved by the kind of venture SaaS model. I don't know. It's kind of
yeah. I mean, it's interesting that Anthropic doesn't seem to be going that way, right? Like they are staffing up, they continue to hire
mm-hmm,
engineers, they continue to work in like, from what I can tell, regular like
mm-hmm,
quote unquote normal teams.
yeah,
Although the interesting thing there is that Google invented a lot of the technology or like mainstreamed a lot of the technology that made it easy to do remote work and did not have
mm,
a very remote first culture. It was much
mm-hmm,
more of a like, oh, we're in person, we're going to whiteboard together.
mm-hmm,
So maybe some of that won't actually come from those orgs. It'll come from someplace else.
mm,
The other thing that I think about a lot, my first product job was selling to farmers,
mm,
software solutions to farmers. And one of the things that was interesting in watching them was that they have all sorts of people that know more about a domain coming and trying to sell them stuff. And so
mm-hmm,
they have all these ingenious ways to like basically to flush out BS, right? And
mm-hmm,
so they're like, okay, well you're telling me that your GMO seed is going to give me a higher yield. Well, I'm going to run 3 test strips in the middle of my fields, and I'm going to test you versus the other things. And same with different chemicals. They'll listen to your pitch. It really
mm-hmm,
helps if it's intuitive to them. But at the end of the day, they're going to kind of come up with their own way to decide because at the end of the
mm-hmm,
day, it's their money and their operation. And all the time when I'm working with AI, I'm like, okay, how am I going to
mm-hmm,
ground truth you, right? Like you're more
mm-hmm,
persuasive than me. You know fancier words, you're faster, but how do I ground truth you? I think is
mm-hmm.
absolutely a like, if it's not a skill, it's a hack for sure.
Totally. Yeah, I'm in a co-working space here. This is like this is the podcast studio that I get for this. But one of the other tenants kind of nearby is Halter, which makes these like collars for basically cattle ranching that I think the ranchers can kind of set virtual fences basically, and I think there's some like feedback to the cow as they get close to it to kind of like back off. But it's a cool company. It's like so the sales team's here, and like they're kind of rowdy and fun. You can tell the company's doing well.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of company I think that's just like hard to see that coming out of Silicon Valley. Like I think the founders are like from New Zealand and like new ranching, and like how do you talk to ranchers and kind of empathy for their problems. So yeah, it reminds me of the kind of talking to farmers. If you're coming out of like Silicon Valley, they're probably gonna like have their like bullshit detector on and.
Oh, totally. Yeah. They loved giving us the runaround for sure.
And one thing that has come up for me this week that I'm maybe didn't appreciate before is this this notion of like workflow seems to be quite important, like kind of durable workflows, because I you can see it, like the Eve framework is pretty nice, but in a way it's just bringing together various other pieces that Vercel has been adding. So you're like, okay, obviously we need sandboxes. So everybody's adding there's a bunch of sandbox companies like Daytona, Cloudflare has sandboxes, Vercel has sandboxes. So you need that. And then a while ago they added sort of this workflow SDK, and it's basically just like this pretty simple primitive where you have a workflow and you have steps. And I think the hard part is kind of the durability. It's like, what happens if one of them fails, or is it retried, or like where is there any persistence? And so that's kind of a piece of it. But then I think if you look over on like Cloudflare's version of the framework, I think they call theirs like durable streams. It's like the primitive that they're building it on. So there's something about like, and so as I'm like kind of thinking of these little I wouldn't even call it an agent. It's just like I have this little micro job that like I just want the daily brief in the morning from like this one query. Where should that get built? I don't need a web app. I don't need like a whole Next.js app. I could build an Eve agent, but like it's not even really an agent. I think I just need like a workflow, and like and it's just the just the development experience around like, cool, how do I trigger that locally and like see if it's working, or like now like when that gets deployed, I just want to like deploy a single workflow basically. And so there's something interesting about that's not a like that workflow concept is not a thing I really thought about until the last few months, but it just seems to be like the essential primitive for like this agent kind of stuff, because you're typically like invoking some API that's like streaming to you, and then it's like asynchronous. It may take a while. There's approval steps, so it might be that like this thing comes back and it posts a Slack thing that's like asking for my approval. Maybe I'm busy and I come back to that in like 2 weeks. Like that should still, where does that thing live that I can hit approve and it continues? So
Sure. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. It's definitely really powerful. I mean, and it's hard to do that in a small way right now. What you want is for it to be like bite-sized, and you can kind of like put them there so that you can make lots of them or throw them away so they're cheap, right? And today there's this gap between, yeah, that's have you played with the durable workflows at all?
yeah. I mean, Eve is built on workflows, and then the thing I've been prototyping today is built on a workflow. I mean, the vision I'm trying to get to is actually I want to program these things entirely in Markdown. So I'm trying to figure out what's the minimal. You need a place for it to run.
You and
And
Casey.
so, I mean, everyone. Yeah, I just like want to. I just love this. I mean, I've been like obsessed with this idea of like Markdown coding for a while, and just like, but like you need a little bit of structure. Like our friend Gordon, he just had a post on his Substack about sort of Markdown plus front matter. I think is just sort of this like the lingua franca in a way of like communicating with these things, because you have the sort of body for just the unstructured, like read this, but then you have like some front matter fields which are kind of structured. And so I may end up open sourcing a few things. I have like internal packages for like Markdown schema and like Markdown templates and just like these little primitives. But like, I think that I'm realizing that like workflow is kind of a compile target that I need. So it's like I want to be able to just author, like here's the instructions. You can imagine that the job I'm trying to solve right now, it's like all I should have to write is the body explaining how I want this to be summarized, and maybe I put like the post hog query in like a front matter field, and like that's all I should have to author, and then that should be able to go and get deployed to Vercel, and I could put it on a cron or I could trigger it. So I like this sort of extreme thought experiment of like, what if you had to program in Markdown and that's like all you got? You don't really get to write TypeScript. You don't get to write Python. Like obviously it's not gonna be as expressive as like code where you can do anything, but
This is basically what I do. Like I spend so I'm working on Agent CAD, which is a computer assisted design software for agents, and so it allows them to do all of the things that you would do in a CAD. You can put together multiple parts, you can make them transparent, you can because the agent still has to look at them and move them around, and it's also to some extent a thought experiment. And when I'm working on parts, I basically like get to the point where I use it working with the agent, get to the point where I like have a PRD that I believe in, and then I basically am like, okay, break this into milestones for me, and then go build it. And I'm manually testing, and I don't even really I don't read the code, right? If I can verify it myself, I do. If I can't verify it myself, it's probably not a feature I should be building.
Totally.
Yeah, but so. I guess occasionally the agent will reference the code to me, but I don't know. Works pretty well for me.
Yeah, totally. I like your CAD thing. I guess you shared something with me about the engines and kernels
Yeah.
essay. I thought that was quite good. I shared that with my team. Um, I'm trying to. I mean, basically, I think the idea was like, you have these kind of quite large companies. I mean, CAD sort of obviously one of them, but like Mathematica, say, like, it's a product you interact with via their UI, but the hard part, the IP, is really the sort of like kernel or engine under the hood. And so if you built some powerful engine like Photoshop or AutoCAD or something before, you basically would put a UI on it. That UI is going to be really complicated because the underlying domain's complicated, and even experts will have a hard time actually kind of really learning the tool. But like now, if you think about how those are kind of decoupling,
Mm-hmm.
and you see it with like this sort of channels idea where it's like, okay, like I'm now interacting with Devin from Slack, but like the powerful thing is that they built the whole sort of cloud environments, all this kind of stuff back there. So I might ping it from Slack. I might, maybe it wakes itself up and goes to work. Maybe I do it from email. Like it's almost like I want it to almost be like multi-channel or like channel agnostic, like where I interact with these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think that's like an interesting kind of new direction for like opportunities where like I've been kind of thinking to myself, like, what engine are we building?
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not building some hard engine that helps humans with their goals, but also is like, will increasingly be like used by agents on behalf of humans, like make it, kind of agent friendly. It's like I don't know, it's a good thought experiment. I liked that.
Yeah,
Post you
I'm
shared.
I'm upset. I love that. That's from Davis at Innovation Endeavors. We'll
Mm.
try to get him to come on at some point too. But yeah, it's I in this it was not that uncommon for people to say maybe like 6 months or a year ago that sources of truth would still be durable, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
you're probably not going to migrate off of Salesforce. What you're going to
Mm-hmm.
do is you're going to yell at them until they give you a headless experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Although your experience with Adio would suggest that maybe that's not totally true, or it will affect you in terms of new signups. But I do think that definitely these kernels are these engines are going to be really sticky, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the question is how much, to what degree, will offering an agent first experience allow people to like shift the ground of competition enough to get a toe in the door.
Yeah, totally.
So
Yeah, I mean, it's like all new. Like, we're also using a tool called Apollo, which is helpful for kind of like prospecting and figuring out like, how can I find people with this like very specific role to
sure.
reach out to. And of course, like that also has MCP. So my CEO is basically interacting with both of these tools headlessly. And I forget if it was the Apollo. I saw a post from like, I think it's maybe a go-to-market person at, it's either Apollo or Add. I think it was Apollo, who basically said like they're in charge of kind of this headless MCP CLI way to access it. And they said it's like the fastest growing product they've had. Like it's been a very fast ramp. But also there was an interesting kind of confession where he said, even though I lead this area, it's like hard to figure out what can we do that where like Claude couldn't do it better. So in a way, you're like, you get all of this growth because people are now using the product actually much, much more via things like Claude, but then also you end up like Claude is kind of this like whoever like the Claude or ChatGPT or whatever is like kind of like the front end, and you're like okay, we gave you the MCPs, we gave you the the CLIs or the APIs, like what now, like what like what do you need next? And so
So I think I have answers to this. At least this is what I've been thinking a lot with Agent CAD. So like one thing is that I believe that agents are not going to write 100% of software themselves to solve problems.
mhm,
Like
mhm,
the example that comes to mind for me is FFmpeg. No
mhm,
agent ever sits down and is like, I'm going to re-implement that. No, what they do is they say, I'm going to use it,
mhm,
right? Okay, so
mhm,
so that's to say it is possible to make software that is useful to agents, and those agents will choose that software. Um,
mhm,
the It does seem like you can improve or hinder an agent's ability to get things done based on the tools that you give it.
mhm,
And then one of the places where I end up spending a lot of time is it's one thing to say that a shape is invalid, right? It's another thing to explain to the agent why that shape is invalid in a way that makes it easy for it to fix it. And that to
mhm,
me feels a lot like a user experience that
mhm,
you can provide. So that's another one. And then the
mhm,
third is that there's almost always a human on the other side, right? Which is
mhm,
like there's a
mhm,
person that is going to consume it, and so then there's a handoff point that may or may not necessarily be natural for the agent that you can again make ergonomic for the agent to
mhm,
do. You
mhm,
can anticipate the way that a human and the agent are going to want to interact.
mhm, That's cool.
And then the last one is feedback, right? So like getting ways to get agents to allow agents to give you feedback.
Mm-hmm.
How is the ADIO team, or whoever going to do that, or the Apollo team going to do
Mm-hmm.
that? They need to be
Mm-hmm.
thinking about how they get that so that they don't lose that ground to somebody else. So anyway,
Uh,
Agent CAD,
hmm.
if you use it, if you get you get stuck or your agent gets stuck, it can it sends a feedback that I get a ping. It's a little like attached to the marketing website that I made for it. And I
Mm-hmm.
really stood up the marketing website so I would have a place to host my feedback request form.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how actually one of the biggest ways I know it's being used, because it runs locally, it's open source, but that's the way that I actually have that I've known that people in the wild are using it, because I'm like, oh, I just got this feedback from a Windows machine. Like, that definitely wasn't me. So
Yeah, it's cool. I like it. I mean, it's a fun time to. It's like, yeah, challenge your assumptions about how to build things. I mean, before I started this company, when I was kind of on my own, just building things with AI, I spent about 6 months working on like these LaTeX tools, which is kind of this math rendering language I used when I was in grad school. And so I made this product called Tech Sandbox. And looking back on after I read that engines thing, I was like, oh right, this is like I spent 99% of the effort trying to build the engine, and I had all these like modal, sandbox infrastructure, and I had to have the whole tech live distribution and like all of that kind of stuff, and then evals around every time it didn't compile. Why is that? And so I'm kind of like building this engine, but it was sort of hidden and intermingled with like this UI that you had to like come to my
Sure.
website and like sign up with Clerk, and then you can interact. And the UI was actually fairly basic. It was just sort of a
Sure.
chat interface. But I hadn't really thought of it that way. And today, if I were to do that, I mean, I've kind of moved on from that project. But if I were to do it today, I would just think about it like engine first. I'd be like, cool, I'm going to just build like the best engine for rendering like full LaTeX, and think of the users as like people in Claude or ChatGPT, and like go get in their plugin marketplaces, because like they can do basic LaTeX in the browser there's a couple of like engines in the browser, but they're very basic. If you're like an academic, you're like, no, I need like the real
Yeah, the real
package. I
thing.
need to do diagrams or something, and doesn't run in the browser. That's got to run somewhere. And so yeah, if you thought about it sort of like agent first distribution, I don't know what the business model is, but like that, I would build it in a very
Me neither.
different way, and I might just have like a website and think of it almost like a thin client of my own engine,
Yeah.
just to sort of like show you that this thing is real, but like really like the APIs are actually like, you should go use it in Claude, like don't use it here.
Yep. Yep. All right. Is that where we should leave it? Anything else before we head off?
No, I'm off to camping. I'm gonna try to unplug and
Enjoy.
not
Listen,
think about agents or tokens or
AI
anything.
anxiety. Yeah. All right. Well,
Just be out in the woods. All right, always fun chatting.
yeah. See ya.
Later.